The atmosphere in the grand hall of the State House was thick with suffocating tension. Dark clouds of fury loomed over the faces of everyone present, their eyes burning with nothing but the scorched fire of revenge. Suddenly, amidst this stifling silence, the muffled sound of a girl's sobbing broke through. She was ruthlessly shoved onto the floor, landing right at the feet of the master of the house. "Here is your reparation. Now, your legal and familial vendetta against my son must end once and for all." A heavy voice, dripping with malice, echoed through the hall. The girl who had been cast onto the cold marble floor felt her head spinning violently. She shook her head in a constant, desperate no while weeping. Shivering and trying to hide herself within the folds of her long overcoat, she choked on her sobs. Betrayal. Such a massive, hideous betrayal. Today, her faith in the last remaining relationship she had in this world had been shattered. The state guards grabbed her by the arms and forced her to stand. In her hazel green eyes, waves of disbelief still swirled. How could a man fall to such apathetic, lowly level? "Call the justice of the peace," the head of the family made his final announcement. She writhed in the guard's grip like a fish out of water. "Let me go. I have nothing to do with these people. This man, he isn't my brother. Why should I suffer for his crimes?" she screamed, struggling to break free. But once again, a guard gripped her arm tightly and threw her back down at this master's feet. She fell directly against the shoes of the man who had just entered the hall. She had never endured such humiliation in her entire life. To these powerful people, she was nothing more than a spectacle, a mere pawn in their game. The official responsible for the marriage documents had arrived. Before the guard could step forward to grab her again, a commanding, authoritative voice thundered through the hall. "How dare you lay a hand on her?" In the next instant, he landed a powerful punch squarely on the guard's jaw. The room gasped, hands flying to mouths in shock. "Who gave you the order to touch a woman? Is this the tradition of our family?" he hissed in fury, grabbing the guard by the collar. "That's enough, Sheyden," Mr. Simon Blackwood's voice rang out. Sheyden released the guard with a violent shove. "Go! Get out of here! I don't want to see your face on this estate ever again!" He was in a cold rage. The guard bowed his head in silence and retreated. For the first time, the girl gathered the courage to lift her face and look at him. He was a young man, roughly 26 years old, with piercing, eagle-like green eyes. He had a handsome, incredibly serious face with sharp features. Standing over 6 feet tall with a fair, ruddy complexion and a powerful, athletic build, he was undeniably imposing. Whoever he was breathlessly attractive. She had seen many men in her life, but she had never encountered someone this mesmerizing. Dressed in a black 3-piece suit, he radiated power and influence. She quickly pushed herself up from the floor. For a fleeting second, she felt that perhaps this was the man who might show her mercy. He had just fired a guard for her sake. "I'm innocent. I'm telling the truth. I have no connection to this man. Please don't punish me for his crimes. He isn't my brother. These people brought me here through deception. Please let me go, I'm begging you," she pleaded, her voice breaking with grief. He looked at her with a quiet, somber intensity. Only his eyes betrayed any emotion. There was something in those eyes, a flash of truth, a deep helplessness, an unspoken pain. But Sheyden's heart had turned to stone in that moment. "Officer, proceed with the marriage proceedings." Mr. Simon's voice cut through the air, and the girl's heart felt as though it had shattered into 1,000 pieces. She looked at the man again, desperate for him to save her, but he simply turned and sat down calmly in a chair. The strength left her legs, and she collapsed back onto the floor. Her eyes turned glassy. Those eyes, which only yesterday held so many dreams, were now overflowing with tears. She glanced at the man whom 2 guards were holding firmly. There was such intense agony in her gaze that he lowered his head. The officer asked for her consent to sign the marriage contract. "Rosalie Miller, daughter of Arthur Miller, do you of your own free will accept this marriage to Sheyden Blackwood, son of Simon Blackwood, under the terms of this reparation agreement?" "I'm begging you, spare my son's life." The distant plea of a mother echoed in her ears. Every emotion seemed to drain from her being at once. "I do," her trembling lips whispered. She answered 3 times. Sheyden had already signed the papers. Suddenly, she found it difficult to breathe. She began to suffocate, clutching her chest in agony. Her coat slipped from her head as everyone watched her struggle. Sheyden realized something was horribly wrong. He stood up and rushed to her side. "What's happening to her?" he roared at Frank, who was still restrained by guards. Frank was fighting to free himself. Sheyden signaled the guards to release him. Frank rushed to Rosalie. "Rosie! Rosie!" He knelt on the floor and patted her cheeks. "Where is her inhaler?" he yelled, looking toward his father. Within seconds, the inhaler was pressed to her mouth. Rosalie gasped for air, taking deep, ragged breaths. It took 5 minutes for her condition to stabilize. "She has asthma," Frank explained, while Sheyden looked at the girl in shock. She barely looked 18. If she hadn't had her inhaler, she could have died. "She needs her medication on time," Frank added, providing the details. Rosalie wasn't listening. She gripped the inhaler tightly in her fist. "Get away from me. I am nothing to you. Don't you dare touch me again, or it will end badly for you," she exploded with suppressed rage. Sheyden remained silent, staring at her face. For the first time, he really saw her. Her beautiful hazel-green eyes swimming with moisture, her flawless, milky white skin marked by the trails of her tears, her sharp and perfectly proportioned features. She was a breathtaking young woman. She was so beautiful that any man who looked at her once would surely ache to look again. She appeared to be no more than 17 or 18. Frank stepped back in shame. She rose from the ground and cast a cold, piercing look at Arthur Miller, whose face showed not a single shred of remorse. "Congratulations, your son's life is saved. But I want to say one last thing to you," she spoke, ignoring the influential people surrounding her. "Damn a father as low and deceitful as you." She spoke so loudly that everyone gasped in shock. She didn't just speak words, she spat venom that struck directly at her father's conscience. He was infuriated. Arthur Miller raised his hand to strike her, but before the slap could land on Rosalie's face, someone caught his wrist in a vice-like grip. It was Sheyden Blackwood. "How dare you raise your hand against her?" he growled with such ferocity that everyone was stunned. "She was your daughter until yesterday. As of today, she is my wife, my honor. You have lost the right to touch her forever. From this moment on, she has no connection to you. Take your son and get out of here." He wasn't just speaking, he was roaring. Frank looked at his father in silence and walked out. The father followed, turning away to hide his humiliation. Rosalie watched them leave with stony eyes. The spectacle was over. The people in the hall began to depart, but Cher remained there, staring at the path where the father and son had disappeared. "Come on, we have to go home now. Forget them. You no longer have a relationship with them." Sheyden's voice broke through her thoughts. He spoke in an extremely cold tone as he took her hand and led her toward the car. She followed him like a lifeless puppet. He placed her in the car and got into the driver's seat. The engine started and they headed toward the Blackwood mansion. She leaned against the seat like a porcelain doll, her tears finally dried up. 5 minutes later, the car stopped in front of a grand, magnificent mansion. He got out, but she remained motionless. He walked to her side, opened the door, and took her hand to lead her out. She offered no resistance. He led her inside. Eleanor Blackwood was pacing the hall like a wounded serpent, clearly waiting for them. As soon as she saw Sheyden, she rushed toward him. Her eyes fell on Rosalie standing behind him. She was clearly aware of the arrangement. Sheyden looked at the servants. "Take her to my room," he commanded. But Eleanor was possessed by the ghost of vengeance. "I won't just let her be. Hand her over to me. I will make her life a living hell, just like her brother killed my daughter," she screamed. "Mother!" Sheyden signaled her to remain calm, but she reached Rosalie and jerked her forward. Before Sheyden could intervene, her hand swung through there. Crack! A stinging slap landed on the innocent girl's cheek. Rosalie felt as if her face had been set on fire. Tears began to flow once more. Sheyden quickly grabbed her arm, pulled her away from his mother, and shielded her behind his back. "How could you strike her?" he asked, looking at his mother in disbelief. "Are you going to oppose me for the sake of this girl? This insignificant girl whose father gave her away as a payment? She drank the blood of my daughter. I won't let her live." Eleanor was so enraged, she looked ready to strangle Rosalie. "Mother, you will never touch her again. She is my wife now. She has nothing to do with those people anymore. She carries my name. You will not lay a hand on her. Only I have the right to punish her. I will decide what her punishment should be, and my punishment will be far more terrifying than a single slap." When he spoke, his tone was colder than ice. Eleanor, initially surprised, calmed down after hearing his last words. "Go, take her upstairs to my room," he ordered the maid again. As he released Rosalie's arm, she walked silently with the maid. At that moment, Sheyden's phone rang, and he headed toward his study. As soon as he left, Eleanor glared at the servants. "Warning! If any of you gives this girl even a single glass of water, I will fire you. She is to have no food or drink. Let her remain thirsty." After delivering her command, she went to her own room. The maid had left her in the room. Rosalie stared blankly at the vast, sprawling bedroom. Various photos of Sheyden hung on the wall, some in business suits, others in casual wear. Perhaps they were from his university days or a corporate office. He was clearly a successful businessman. She walked silently to the bed and sat down like a lifeless statue. She knew that she would be subjected to every kind of mental and physical torture here. Sheyden sat in his study, laptop open, searching for something. He held his phone to his ear. "You told me she was an orphan?" His voice was laced with suppressed anger. "Sir, my information was perfectly accurate. I checked her history myself. She was very young when her mother passed away. And there's not race of her father. It's not in the records who left her at the orphanage. She was there for years. The director of the orphanage treated her like a daughter, which is why she sent her to college. She lived at the orphanage, but to hide that fact, she was sent to a hostel so no one would mock her." Sheyden's head felt like it was going to explode. "If this information proves true, you'll get double your fee. But if even one thing is wrong, I won't spare you." He slammed the phone onto the desk in frustration. Those hazel green eyes kept flashing before him. He leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, and drifted into memories of the past. It was about 2 months ago. He was on his way to the office when his car broke down. Puddles of rainwater from the previous night still lingered on the road. He was waiting for a mechanic when he saw her across the street. He couldn't take his eyes off her. Dressed in a white collared shirt and skirt, the girl was crossing the road with a faint smile on her face. She was holding a book over her head to shield herself from the raindrops. She looked like an innocent, beautiful student. Sheyden watched her until she disappeared through the college gates. A strange smile played on his lips. It wasn't that he hadn't seen beautiful women before, but the attraction he felt toward this girl was unlike anything he had ever experienced. He wanted to go inside and find out who she was, but he dismissed the thought and took a taxi to the office. That was the first encounter between Sheyden and Rosalie. No words, no introductions, just a heart making a decision on its own. He saw her a second time at a shopping mall. She was with an older woman. "Mama, look at this dress. It's so pretty." She was picking out clothes. He was there for a meeting, but he forgot everything just to watch her. Her face held that same vibrant smile. "Rosie, let's go. It's getting late. We should head out." The woman's voice reached him. "Rosie." He whispered the name. A smile spread across his lips. After a moment of thought, he took out his phone and secretly took a photo of her. He wanted to know everything about her. He already knew the college. Now he had a name and a photo. He sent the image to his PA. "I want full details on this girl." 2 weeks later, the report came in. "Sir, she lives in an orphanage. No one knows who she is or who her parents are. I'm investigating further." Sheyden's expression darkened. He felt like strangling his PA for the lack of clarity. After that, he had to go to his family estate for a few days, so he thought it best to put Rosalie out of his mind. But as soon as he arrived, the news he received shattered his world. His only younger sister, Ruby, had been murdered. Her body had been brought home. She had gone to a friend's house, and no one expected her to return like this. She had been strangled. Some witnesses had seen her arguing with Frank. Frank was the son of a rival business family. He wanted to marry Ruby, but she wanted to finish her education and make something of herself. Frank was insistent, but Ruby wasn't ready. Perhaps there was a relationship between them, and in the heat of the argument, Frank had killed her. Frank had been caught by the police and had confessed to the crime. He seemed deeply remorseful. To end the blood feud between the families, a secret settlement was reached. Sheyden was the heir to his family, and his only sister had been snatched from him. No one knew the depth of his grief. He was very young when his father died, and Ruby wasn't even a year old at the time. Sheyden had raised her like a father. He loved her dearly. One thing was certain: he wanted revenge at any cost. But Arthur Miller couldn't bear to see his only son rot in prison or die, so he saved his son's life by making Rosalie a contract bride. When Rosalie was brought into the hall, the ground had slipped from beneath Sheyden's feet, but he did what seemed appropriate at the time. Now, he sat with his eyes closed, nursing his headache. He couldn't understand. If Rosalie was an orphan, what was she doing with those people? What game was Arthur Miller playing? His heart. The heart he had given to Rosalie at first sight could never dream of punishing her. He had dreamed of marrying her, but today she had become his wife, but under such different circumstances. He was restless. He stood up and lay down on the sofa. He wanted to forget everything and just sleep. Outside, the night had grown deep. She hadn't eaten anything since morning, and her body was beginning to burn with fever. Sheyden had fallen into a deep sleep, oblivious to the world. It was late at night. Thunder rumbled outside, the sound waking Rosalie. She looked around in confusion. She was still in Sheyden's room. She had fallen asleep leaning against the bed. Now that she was awake, she felt a sharp pain in her stomach. She still had the inhaler in her hand. She placed it on the side table and stood up. She adjusted her coat and looked around the room. She was parched and starving. Sheyden was not in the room. She hesitantly stepped out of the room because there was no water left inside. Frightened, she descended the stairs and saw Eleanor Blackwood coming out of the kitchen with a pitcher of water. When she saw Rosalie, a wave of hatred crossed her face. "What's the problem? What are you doing here?" A maid followed Eleanor out of the kitchen. I need water." Her voice was barely a whisper. Eleanor's presence was terrifying. "Your people killed my daughter, and now you want water? Not a single drop from this house is permitted to you. I don't care if you die of thirst." She was still spitting venom. Rosalie's eyes filled with tears. "Madam, I'm innocent. I'm not the girl you think I am." She wanted to explain, but the woman wasn't listening. "Don't call me madam, and don't you dare speak to me again," she roared. Rosalie couldn't stand any longer. She hadn't eaten or drank all day, and the weakness made her head spin. Her heart began to race, and it became extremely difficult to breathe. She collapsed to her knees on the floor, gasping. The stress was triggering a severe asthma attack. Eleanor watched her struggle. "What's wrong? Are you in pain?" she asked coldly. Rosalie gathered all her strength. "Inhaler. Please get my inhaler. I'm going to die," she pleaded through tears. "Go upstairs to the room and bring her inhaler," Eleanor ordered the maid. The maid ran up and returned in 2 minutes, but Eleanor signaled her to stop. "Throw that inhaler into the trash. Let her suffer and die just like my daughter must have. She must have struggled like this, right? You die the same way," she whispered poison into her ear. "Leave her like this. If you give it to her, I will end your life." She gave the command and turned away. The maid bowed her head in silence. "Where is Sheyden?" Eleanor asked as she left. "He's sleeping in the study," the maid replied. Eleanor glanced toward the room where a dim light was glowing and then went to her own room. Rosalie was desperately clutching her chest. "Please give it to me for God's sake," she begged the maid, but the woman stood still. There was sympathy in her eyes, but she was loyal to her mistress. Rosalie felt like she was fading, but she remembered that if she died, she would never be able to prove her innocence. She forced herself up from the floor. The maid watched her. With stumbling steps, she moved toward the study. She opened the door with great difficulty. The sound of the door woke Sheyden, but because of his fever, he couldn't open his eyes. She looked at Sheyden lying on the sofa. She was certain this man wouldn't let her die. If anyone had shown her even a shred of humanity today, it was him. She came close and sat on the floor beside him. She shook his arm, and he sat up with a start. He looked at her in confusion, his face flushed with fever. "I can't breathe. I'm going to die," she sobbed. He immediately snapped to full consciousness. "Rosie, what happened? Are you okay?" He took her face in his hands. In short, broken breaths, she told him that the maid had her inhaler and wouldn't give it to her. Sheyden's eyes turned red with fury. The fever, the headache, and Rosalie's condition turned him feral. In the next moment, his roar echoed through the entire mansion. "Bethany! Bethany!" He wasn't calling the maid. He was screaming. The maid entered, trembling. "Yes! Yes, sir?" Sheyden stood up, snatched the inhaler from her hand without a word, and rushed to Rosalie. He pressed it to her lips. Rosalie's body was still shaking. A few minutes later, once her breathing had stabilized, Sheyden glared at the maid. He had forgotten about revenge and vendettas. All he remembered was that this girl was his wife, and she had been treated this way in his home. "What are you standing there for? Get water!" he thundered. "Sir, the mistress said—" The maid tried to speak. "I said get water, now!" He looked like a cornered lion. The maid ran to the kitchen. Rosalie sat leaning against the sofa with her eyes closed, tears still falling. Sheyden came close to her. "Rosie," he called out softly. Rosalie wasn't used to such kindness. She began to cry even harder. Sheyden silently pulled her to his chest. Rosalie lost all sense of her surroundings and just wept. He stroked her hair, making her feel safe. It was the first time a man had ever treated her with such tenderness. Sheyden forgot everything because seeing her in pain made his own heart stop. "Everything will be fine. Just calm down," he reassured her. When the maid brought water, Sheyden gave it to her himself. "Have you eaten anything?" he hissed. Rosalie didn't answer, just continued to sob. Sheyden understood her silence. "Go and heat up some food immediately," he ordered. The maid hurried to the kitchen. He supported Rosalie and helped her sit upright on the sofa. She was still crying. Sheyden wondered, is this what love feels like? "I am not Arthur Miller's biological daughter. They brought me here through deception just to save their own daughter." Those words rang in Sheyden's ears like an explosion. He sat down beside her. "Who are you? I want the whole truth." He was dead serious. "I grew up in an orphanage. My mother passed away, and I don't know who she was. Who left me there is also a mystery. I lived there my whole life. The director of the orphanage is a wonderful woman. She considers me her daughter, and I call her Mama. She is everything to me. Arthur Miller's own daughter is named Ramona. Everyone calls her Rosie affectionately as well." Sheyden listened in silence as she wiped her tears. "I met Ramona in college. Since we both went by the name Rosie, we became friends. I told her the truth, that I lived in an orphanage. I had no idea she would betray me so cruelly. She told me she was the daughter of a major businessman and wanted to show me her family ranch. I got permission from Mama and went with her. Her mother gave me so much love. Frank treated me like a sister. Her father called me his daughter. I thought I had finally found a family. How was I to know it was all an act? Ramona told me her brother had made a mistake and that I had to go to these people, to you, and ask for forgiveness. She said if she came herself, she would be forced into a marriage and she loved someone else. I came here with her father. Her mother begged me, save my son. I felt sorry for them because I had no family of my own and I didn't want to see a home destroyed. I came. But what happened here? You saw it yourself. What is my fault? That I trusted Ramona? Am I really the guilty one? If you still think I deserve to be punished, I'm ready. But will that bring your sister back?" Tears began to flow from Sheyden Blackwood's eyes. Yes, for the first time, he wept for someone else's pain. Without a word, he pulled Rosalie back into his arms. She was surprised at first, then buried her face in his chest and cried. "Mama will be so worried about me. She doesn't know what happened to me. Is being an orphan such a great crime? Do we not have lives of our own? Were we born just to be pawns for others?" she managed to say through her hiccups. Sheyden patted her head. "Never say you're an orphan again. From today on, I am with you. I am your husband, your protector. You are no longer helpless. And what that man, Arthur, did, he will have to answer for it. I will teach every single one of them a lesson. What happened to my sister, and then what was done to you. I won't let them go." There was such iron in his voice that Rosalie just stared at him. "Do you believe me?" she asked innocently. "Yes, because I know these eyes cannot lie," he replied with the same tenderness. She leaned against him again. Sheyden kissed her forehead, a kiss filled only with honor and respect. "Everything will be fine. You don't need to cry anymore. I will bring them all before the law and the courts. I don't think it was Frank who killed your sister. Sheyden looked at her in surprise. How can you say that with such certainty? He was amazed that Rosalie was defending them after they had wronged her, because Frank truly loved her. He told me he couldn't live without Ruby. He had even spoken to his mother, but when his mother found out she was a Blackwood, she refused and warned him never to mention it to his father, or things would get ugly. But Frank wasn't ready to back down. He loved her too much. A person who loves like that can never take a life. I saw the pain in Frank's eyes. It wasn't the pain of a killer. It was the pain of someone who has lost everything. Sheyden felt his head spinning. Then why did he confess? Rosalie's mind was working fast. Maybe he knows who the real killer is and is trying to protect someone close to him. My heart tells me Frank isn't the murderer. Lovers don't hurt their love. Sheyden pondered those words. She was right. Those who love cannot kill. He had fallen for Rosalie. Otherwise, would he have let her sit so close to him? You're right. Truly, you can't stand to see the one you love in pain. Just like I couldn't stand to see you suffering. Rosalie looked at him in shock. Love? She whispered. Yes, love. I saw you for the first time on that road, and you've lived in my heart ever since. I didn't know we would meet like this, but don't worry, I will keep my promise. If Frank is innocent, nothing will happen to him. He patted her cheek, and for the first time, Rosalie realized she was no longer alone in this world. Do you really love me that much? She asked. I don't know the truth behind love at first sight, but I have fallen for you. I didn't know who you were or where you lived. My heart just knew when I saw you. I never imagined our marriage would happen under these circumstances. But I'm happy you've entered my life. I will never cause you any sorrow. The maid had set the food down. Our marriage happened in a way you never could have imagined, but I want you to stay with me forever as my wife. Will you stand by me? He took her hand, his eyes full of hope. Rosalie was stunned. You won't take revenge on me? Sheyden shook his head. You aren't at fault, so why would I seek revenge? Tell me, will you love me as I love you? He took her face in his hands, and tears spilled from Rosalie's eyes. But my education? She worried about her studies. No problem. You study. I will make sure you finish your education. Now give me an answer. He was anxious. Rosalie held his hand. I don't know what love is, but if you love me this much, I cherish that. If you will always be my protector, I will stay with you for the rest of my life. You are my husband. I will love only you. She had agreed. Sheyden felt as though he had been given a new life. He pulled her into his arms. He could feel his fever subsiding. Thank you for coming into my life. He wiped her tears and fed her with his own hands. Rosalie suddenly remembered something. I want to see my mama once, please, she said with a newfound sense of belonging. All right, we'll go in the morning. After feeding her, he led her toward the bedroom. Come, you need to rest. He took her upstairs. Behind them, Eleanor stood watching in amazement at how soft her son had become for this girl. In the room, he laid Rosalie on the bed and tucked her in. She fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. The next morning, Sheyden told his mother the entire truth, leaving Eleanor in shock. Arthur Miller practiced such a massive deception? She was both surprised and ashamed. At breakfast, she apologized to Rosalie. Rosalie took her hand. It's all right, Mother. Any mother in your position would have felt the same. Sheyden felt proud of his choice. Don't call me Madam, Eleanor said, affectionately. From today, call me Mom, just like Sheyden does. Rosalie's eyes filled with tears. Yes, Mom, she said with a smile. Eleanor asked, Sheyden, is this the girl you liked? Sheyden smiled and nodded. Your choice is perfect. She isn't my daughter-in-law. She's my daughter now. Rosalie looked at Sheyden, realizing that when a husband respects you, the entire household respects you. After breakfast, he took her to the city. First, they went to the orphanage. Mama was overjoyed to see her. Sheyden told her everything. When Rosalie went to her room to pack her things, Mama decided to tell Sheyden a truth she had hidden until now. Sheyden, there is a truth about Rosalie that you might find hard to bear. Sheyden was confused. What is it? You can tell me. Rosalie is actually Arthur Miller's daughter, from a secret second marriage. The ground vanished from under Sheyden's feet. Yes, 18 years ago her mother worked in Arthur's office. They were secretly married, but Arthur was a lustful man. When he found out she was pregnant, he disappeared. Her parents kicked her out. I found her on the street and brought her here. Before she died, she made me promise to look after her child. Arthur came a few months ago looking for his child, and I told him Rosalie was his daughter. I had no idea he would use her for his own gain. Ramona is the daughter of his second wife, so they are half-sisters. My girl is innocent. Don't punish her for her father's sins. Sheyden's eyes were moist. He felt immense sorrow for Rosalie. Just then, a sound came from behind them. Rosalie was standing by the door, her face pale. She had heard everything. Sheyden rushed to her and held her. "Rosie," he called. Rosalie burst into tears. "No, I cannot be that man's daughter. Ramona cannot be my sister. It's a lie, Mama. Please say it's a lie." It was the biggest shock of her life. "Calm down, Rosie. That man is nothing to you. I am everything to you. Your husband, your confidant." Rosalie looked at him, weeping. "But I am his blood. That's why I was given away as payment." She was spiraling. "No. When he never gave you his name, why should you suffer for his son's punishment?" Sheyden was trying to explain, but she had another asthma attack. Mama rushed over with the inhaler. "It doesn't matter to me who your father is. You are mine, and you always will be." Sheyden held her close. "You won't ever leave me, will you?" she asked fearfully. "Never." Sheyden kissed her forehead. They arrived at the Miller house, which Sheyden's guards had surrounded. Inside were Frank and his mother. "Rosie," Frank said, happy to see her. Rosalie looked at him with different eyes today. "You knew, didn't you, that I was your sister?" Her voice trailed off as she cried. Frank lowered his head like a criminal, and Rosalie had her answer. "Why did you do it?" She grabbed his lapels, weeping. Sheyden stood silently by her side. She stepped forward and hugged Frank. Frank stood frozen for a moment, then tears fell from his eyes. "I never expected anything from my father. But why did I stay there while you were suffering? Is this how brothers are? Tell me," she cried loudly. The noise brought Arthur Miller and Ramona out of their rooms. Everyone watched the scene in shock. "I know it's my fault. Forgive me." Frank hugged her like a child. For the first time, Rosalie felt she wasn't an orphan. She had a brother. "So you want forgiveness? Fine. I will forgive you on one condition. Tell me, who killed Ruby?" she asked so sternly that Frank's face went white, but he remained silent. "I know you aren't the killer." She took Frank's hand and placed it on her head. She knew Frank had a good heart. He would never swear a false oath on Rosalie's life. "Swear on my life and say you killed Ruby." Frank's hand began to tremble. "I know you loved Ruby. You couldn't kill her if you wanted to. Tell me, who killed her?" But Frank lowered his gaze, unable to answer. Sheyden, who had been silent, stepped forward and grabbed Frank by the collar. "What is she asking? Tell me, who killed my sister?" He roared so loudly Frank shook, but he didn't break his silence. Frank's eyes shifted to Arthur Miller. Sheyden stepped forward and landed a powerful punch on Arthur Miller's face. "To save your killer son's life, you'd give away an orphan as compensation to save both your children? Is that what you thought?" he screamed with such intensity that everyone was terrified. His gaze moved to Ramona, who was staring in shock, trying to process everything. She was stunned to see Sheyden. The way Sheyden looked at Rosalie was the way Ramona had once looked at him on the street. She had fallen for him at first sight, never realizing that he was the man she was supposed to be married to. She had deceitfully sent Rosalie in her place, and now she realized she had made a massive mistake. An idea flashed in her mind. She came close to them. "I tried so hard to stop Dad. I was ready to marry you to save Frank's life, but he sent Rosalie by trickery. Please let her go and take me instead." "Are you okay, Rosie?" she asked with fake sympathy. Rosalie brushed her hand away. "You're right. All of this should have happened to you. Rosie is innocent. Sheyden stepped forward and gripped Ramona's wrist tightly. I will marry you right now, but Rosie will remain my wife because she is my love. But you will be treated exactly how one should be treated in a revenge marriage. His tone was pure hatred. Ramona felt as if she had been slapped. He loved Rosalie, an unbelievable reality. Let's go, Rosie. We're going home. Before he could take Ramona away by force, Frank stepped in their way. This can't happen. You can't marry Ramona. This is wrong. Sheyden gave a mocking smile. It is my right to see your family destroyed. Get out of my way, or I'll kill you for my sister's death before I marry yours. He spoke with intense rage. Frank had reached his breaking point. You can't marry Ramona because Rosie is already your wife, and Rosie is also my sister. Dad's daughter, from another woman. The words were like molten lead poured into the ears of the mother and daughter. Ramona's hand went to her lips. 2 tears fell from Rosalie's eyes. I only found out a few weeks ago that Rosalie was my sister. And no, I didn't kill Ruby. I loved her deeply. Dad killed her, he screamed, weeping. Sheyden looked at Arthur Miller with murderous eyes. What nonsense are you talking, Frank? Arthur shouted. Enough, Dad. Not today. I'm not talking nonsense. I know everything. Those filthy looks you used to give Ruby. Did you think I didn't see? I knew everything but stayed silent out of respect because I had no legal claim to her then. She was just a girl I loved. I wanted to protect her, which is why I asked her to marry me, but she wanted to build her career. As soon as you found out I wanted to marry her, you offered Ruby money to have an affair with you. But Ruby slapped you for even suggesting such filth. She said, "You should be ashamed. I am your son's choice." That slap wounded your ego, so in your rage, you killed her. Frank collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. I couldn't save her. She was my love. I dreamed of a life with her, but my own father turned out to be my enemy. Before I could turn him in, he threatened to kill Rosalie if I didn't take the blame for Ruby's death. I had grown to love Rosie as soon as I found out she was my sister. I lost Ruby. I didn't have the strength to lose Rosie. But he defeated me there too. Using Rosie as a pawn, this man killed me a second time. I am ashamed to call him my father. The day Ruby died, I decided I would reject this inheritance. I will destroy the very root of this wealth for which they sacrificed Rosie. I curse this man. I am leaving this country very soon. He was crying like a child. Rosalie knelt beside him. Forgive me, Rosie. I love you so much. To me, you and Ramona are equal. Rosalie's tears were flowing freely. Without a word, she hugged Frank like a mother would. Frank cried even louder. Sheyden stepped forward and punched Arthur Miller repeatedly. You vile human being! First you killed my innocent sister, then you tried to hurt my Rosie. Today I will see you punished so severely your soul will tremble. He screamed. Just then, his guards and the police entered. He handed Arthur Miller over to the authorities. Take him away. Make sure he meets his end. He stood up and walked toward the frozen Ramona. He jerked her up by the arm. Your punishment is that from today, you are stripped of all this luxury. You are so fond of playing with other people's lives. Now watch your own life crumble. Ramona felt the life drain out of her. No, please, Sheyden. Forgive me, please. But no one was listening. Sheyden came to Rosalie. Come on, Rosie. Let's go home. Rosalie looked at Frank one last time. I have no father, and I never did. I was alone yesterday, and I am today, but you are my brother. From today, you are my family. No one could do what you did for me. I am happy and proud to be your sister. Frank, stay in touch with me and don't leave your mother. She is not at fault. I am happy with my husband, so don't worry about me. After saying her goodbyes, she left with Sheyden. Time passed, and the court sentenced Arthur Miller for his heinous crimes. Rosalie was indifferent to his punishment. She didn't know what a father was or should be. All she knew was that she had a brother and a loving husband. Ramona also paid for her actions. All her privileges were stripped away, and she was forced to live a meager life. She finally understood what true pain felt like. She lived in a small apartment. Once, she ran into Rosalie at an event. She looked at herself and then at Rosalie. The girl from the orphanage was now the mistress of the Blackwood estate, while the pampered Ramona was living in obscurity. You tried to throw your ruin into my lap, but God made it my destiny. If you hadn't practiced that deception, you would be with Sheyden today, but you chose to sacrifice your own sister. I considered you a friend, but look what you did. This is God's justice. Seeing you today, I don't even feel pity. I have no sympathy for you. I am very happy with my husband, because he gives me the love I deserve." Those were the last words Rosalie ever said to Ramona. Ramona was never allowed near Rosalie again. That was Sheyden's final decree. Frank took his mother and left the city forever, moving to another country to start a new business. Rosalie and Sheyden were incredibly happy in their lives. Ruby's soul was finally at peace. This world is a place of poetic justice. You reap what you sow. Therefore, he who digs a pit for others will eventually fall into it himself. One should always fear the justice of God.